is a time of war because Biden allowed millions of people, many of them criminals, many of them at the highest level. They emptied jails out. Other nations emptied their jails into the United States. That's an invasion. And these are criminals, many, many criminals, murderers, drug dealers at the highest level, drug lords, people from mental institutions. That's an invasion.
Where have I heard that before?
When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're not sending you. They're not sending you. They're sending people that have lots of problems, and they're bringing those problems with us. They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people.
Oh, well, I'm Ben Boyce, and this is the Dr. Junkie Show. So, Trump's heading into month 3, steadily pressing the limits of constitutional limitations and executive power almost every step of the way, and with some of the weirdest minions in tow that I've ever seen, at least since I've been alive. I mean, I guess the minions aren't all weird, but their minionism, is that a word? Their booty kissing, it's wild.
Since Inauguration Day, President Trump has secured trillions of dollars in private and foreign investments. Every single day, more money is pouring into our country.
I want to thank President Trump for his faith in me and his selfless leadership for our republic. The troops have no better commander-in-chief than Donald Trump.
God sent me President Trump, and he gave me... He's now given me, he's kept every promise that he's made to me. He's kept his word in every account and gone way beyond it.
First and foremost, we were just with President Trump, and I just want to thank him. I know he's not here in the room right now, but what a ride we have been on. What a courageous warrior and leader he has been.
Anyway, that's not the point of this episode. Oh, at least not directly. Today's episode is about the war on drugs and the way it's used to justify the dehumanization of people, to make us feel less shocked than we should be when we see them paraded across our screens by masked, armored police officers who have them bent over by the neck. Classy footage the White House released last week, by the way. Imagine if you saw a pastor being treated like that, arrested by the cops who are violently bending them over and pushing them around. Or a kid expelled from school for smoking weed being treated like that. Or somebody who is pregnant. There's something about these particular bodies that makes a lot of people who were seeing those clips circulated by the White House a lot less shocked than they would otherwise be. If you didn't see these clips, or if you're listening to this way down the road when they're dusty history, I don't know, like a week later, they're every bit as shocking as I described, and the White House actually took the time to put together a TikTok-style montage with classy lyrics from the song Closing Time playing in the background. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. This was a brag. It wasn't just footage that leaked. It was proud evidence of a leader doing something to make his followers proud. I linked one of those videos in the episode description in case you don't know what I'm talking about, but it's pretty bad. The cruelty and the celebration of that cruelty, a lot of times by religious people, it's maybe the most off-putting part of the second Trump term, but I gotta say, he's captured the hell out of the media and a lot of the government this time. I mean, he literally just let an unelected billionaire, the richest guy on earth, start cutting as much as he could out of the national budget after attacking DEI programs, which he claimed wrongly were used to hire people for jobs they hadn't worked for. You know, like hiring billionaires to cut government jobs who know nothing about the jobs they're cutting, or hiring an FBI director who said he wants to dismantle the FBI, or picking a vaccine skeptic to run the Department of Health, or maybe a vice president who once explained why he thought Trump aligned with Hitler in his governance style. Oddly, Elon Musk hasn't yet said a word about cutting tax breaks to billionaires, which would add a ton more money to the budget than he's trying to find by cutting Social Security for old people or assistance to poor people. Go figure. This is a country where 70% of us still claim to be Christian, and where a full 90% of us still claim to believe in a literal God. It's bizarre how much our actual behavior often clashes with those stated values. All that turn the other cheek stuff and that love thy neighbor stuff, yeah, fuck that. Bend these guys over, shave their heads, perp walk them on camera, they're Venezuelan gangsters. And all the while, we're talking about what appears to be a pretty clear clash with our Constitution's due process clauses, and with the judicial system's direct court orders, which were apparently violated when these guys were sent to El Salvador to go to prison without due process, even after a court said not to do that. The question this episode is, how the hell do you get away with breaking the Constitution to impress the party of self-proclaimed constitutionalists? You do that by dehumanizing the people who you're going to victimize to the point where the Constitution doesn't apply to them in the minds of a lot of people. That clip at the beginning of this episode, the one where Trump says they're all murderers, drug dealers, rapists, that's what got me thinking about today's show. His tricks to rile up supporters with hate, they're kind of old and rusty. I mean, they're like repackaged George Wallace, David Duke, I don't know, pick the mega preacher your choice shit. Find an enemy, tell us a story where they're a monster responsible for all our troubles, and then get your friends to appoint you head monster killer, compelled by their fear and rage. Yeah, it's an old method to power. But when people see other humans being treated like these guys were being treated, pushed around, assaulted, bent over, slammed into seats by fully armored cops, we're supposed to naturally feel shocked and put off. They're humans like us, so we should have those pesky so-called mirror neurons going off. I know, not a neurologist. We should have this feeling that makes us feel all icky, like that could be us in that situation. That's part of what being a human is. But if that person that's being treated that way isn't seen as fully human for some reason, those neurons won't fire. That means one of the tricks of powerful people is to create an enemy who we don't fully see as human, say a Venezuelan gang member who sells fentanyl to kids, and then abuse them for us, so we view the powerful people who are abusing them as heroes who saved us from the monsters that they created in our minds. It's a dusty-ass old trick. So today I want to spend some time talking about how that dehumanization's happened throughout history, and how it's been used by powerful people to secure their power, mostly by giving us an evil enemy to focus on, and then painting themselves as the hero who slays the dragon. So one recent high-profile case where drug use and addiction were used to excuse terrible treatment was the story of George Floyd. If you've listened to this podcast for a while, then you probably remember a ton about this case, but you might not remember a short clip that also went viral around the same time as the other footage, where bystanders are begging the cop to get off George Floyd's neck. That cop is named Derek Chauvin. He's in prison now. Well, at least for the time being, until Trump tries to get him out too. As he's crushing George Floyd to death, bystanders are yelling at him to stop. And Chauvin's partner keeps himself positioned between the bystanders who are yelling and Chauvin, basically making sure that Chauvin can kill George without anyone interfering. But that cop does more than just physically block the crowd. He tells them why what they're seeing is okay, because the victim is less than fully human. He says this.
This is why you don't do drugs, kids.
And he says it more than once.
Bro, check his balls, bro. You bogus, bro. Don't do drugs, guys. Don't do drugs, bro. Exactly. What is that? What do you think that is? You call what he doing okay? Get back on the story. You call what he doing okay?
He actually says it more than twice. He repeats it again when the paramedics show up.
You need to transfer someone high or something.
And then he even mocks the bystanders who were begging his partner to get off this guy who they just saw murdered.
Allegedly, he was in the police academy, so allegedly.
Oh, of course.
And then the other lady over there is a firefighter, so of course, allegedly.
One woman was a firefighter who was just asking to check his pulse and offer medical aid if she could, and another guy stood there the whole time yelling at Chauvin and calling him a bum while screaming at him to get off George. Good on him, by the way. I always kind of hope when I watch this footage that some Batman-style hero is going to come in from off-screen and tackle all these cops who are killing George, but never happens. The footage from that case is awful. Again, I'm sure you remember it, but I don't think the videos from the officers who were on George can tell us quite as much about the human condition as the video shot from Officer Tho's body cam. He's that guy who was working the crowd, the guy whose mic caught those last few clips of him shitting on drug users to excuse abusing them. I've talked about Hannah Arendt's The Banality of Evil before on this show. She was a Jewish woman who lived during the Holocaust, and she attended the trials of many of the Nazi war criminals because she wanted to figure out what the hell would make a group of people do what these guys did, kill 6 million Jews and a bunch of other people. And what she found out was that the boogeyman doesn't exist. These dudes all thought they were fucking good guys, normal dudes just following orders. They didn't see themselves as mass murderers and genocidal maniacs. They saw themselves as patriots and good soldiers. There was no evil mastermind strumming the tips of his fingers together all Gargamel style. Evil's literally just what people do when they have bad incentives or bad moral foundations or bad goals supported by bad evidence. Bad stories. Think about how different you might treat a snake trying to bite your kid compared to how you might treat another kid trying to bite your kid. One of these things is less valuable, easier to threaten or maybe even kill to protect somebody else without feeling too bad about it. Dehumanization works so well as a way to get people to treat others poorly or to not protest when those around them are treating other people poorly, that it's been studied in settings from prison to war to childhood camps to high schools to church to college undergraduate groups. Robbers Cave, another experiment I've talked about a lot on this show, can still tell us a lot about how humans work. And that's what I also see with these clips. They can offer us a pretty consistent genealogical trail of crumbs through the last century of cruel treatment of people who are labeled as drug users or addicted, often at the hands of the law, but also sometimes from their neighbors or even from their families. It's not just drugs. I could spend an entire episode talking about how some religious identities are treated this way, or how trans folks are treated this way by some people. Religious folks, again, mostly, including members of my family who continue to make me very sad with their dehumanizing transphobic shit, and lots of other groups. But I'm here to talk about drugs, so I'll stick mostly to that, but I want to remind you that you can apply what I'm talking about here to all those other oppressed groups. In fact, Trump's recent claims that these criminals and drug dealers deserve abuse isn't even a new idea for him, although the lines evolved a bit from his usual...
Whether you are a dealer or doctor or trafficker or a manufacturer, if you break the law and illegally peddle these deadly poisons, we will find you, we will arrest you, and we will hold you accountable. These are terrible people, and we have to get tough on those people. And that toughness includes the death penalty.
But way before Chauvin and way before Trump, well, Trump's been around for a long time, so not before him, but before those cases and before Trump's presidency, there's this long trail of cruel treatment rationalized and defended by appeals to the victim's drug use. Drug users are literally seen as less than human in many situations. Just a few years ago, a Mexican cartel leader whose nickname was El Chapo, you might remember him too, he'd escaped from prison multiple times, and he was finally returned to the U.S. to serve the remainder of his time. He's actually serving time here in Colorado now. And I remember footage of him being hard-handled for the cameras. He was grabbed by the neck and twisted down, bent over, in whatever directions they were marching him for the cameras. Only dehumanized humans can be treated that way without turning our stomachs when we see it. And the stories we'd all heard about El Chapo did that. But we can wind the clock back even further. Remember Rodney King? Okay, maybe not. sheesh, now I am showing I'm kind of old. Rodney King was an LA resident who was pulled over in 1991, but he ran in his car. Well, the cops chased him and eventually caught him. They boxed him in, and then it got brutal. There were half a dozen or so cops and just one Rodney, and a dude from a nearby apartment building who had just purchased a top-of-the-line camera for the time. It probably weighed 30 pounds and had double zoom or something. He caught fuzzy footage of the cops beating Rodney while he was on the ground for more than a minute. Something like 50 blows with batons and all, a lot of them in his head. The footage made the news 2 days later, and Rodney King's face was a spectacle that the networks ate up. If it bleeds, it leads. But as you might expect, the cops didn't just say, oopsie, time to fire those officers and make some systematic changes so this never happens again. No. Instead, they claimed that Rodney was under the influence of PCP and therefore he had, superhuman strength. They claimed he was fighting the entire time, despite the video showing him on the ground and never getting up. And it actually worked in court. These cops were eventually acquitted of criminal charges in state court. A few of them later went to jail on federal charges, and they actually beat those state charges by slowing down the video and then arguing to the jury that the cops had what they called professional vision, which allowed them to see what a non-cop could never see, threat after threat that warranted blow after blow. That move with his hand that looks to us like he's blocking a baton from his face was actually him preparing to make a fist. Stuff like that. Oh, and don't forget, he was on PCP. So no wonder they kept hitting him. The reason Rodney King wasn't seen by the police and by a lot of the public in the aftermath is being fully human, as being somebody who should never be treated like that. It was because he was dehumanized the same way George Floyd was a decade later, and the same way thousands of other people have been in the past for drug use. So part of it was race, sure, but part of it was also socioeconomic status. He wasn't exactly driving a Beamer and dressed in a three-piece suit. But his suspected drug use played a huge part not only in the confrontation itself, but also in the story that was told about it to the public. When most of us met Rodney King, we met a drug user who ran from the police and got caught. Not a victim of police brutality whose story was way more common than any of us really wanted to believe. And Rodney King isn't where this started either. In the 70s, Hollywood remade Scarface, a gangster film from the 1930s. The original was really good, by the way. And in its finale, the hero, I guess if you want to call him that, Scarface, he takes off running towards a group of cops who mow him down with bullets. But that was boring by the 1970s in Hollywood, so the remake included a scene you've probably seen even if you weren't born until way after the film came out. Scarface is sitting in his office with the doors closed as a gang of drug lords close in, armed with machine guns, and he puts his face into a pile of cocaine. It's gotta be like a whole kilo dumped out. And he inhales it through this plugged up nose that anybody that's done coke for a night recognizes. And he gets ready for war. And of course, because of the cocaine, now he's bulletproof, or damn close to it. He takes on an entire gang, and he mows down dozens of them, even while they keep shooting him over and over. He's only stopped when his arch nemesis sneaks up behind him and shoots him in the back point blank, finally killing him. Good filmmaking, right? And from that point on, I knew wrongly that cocaine makes you bulletproof, or at least immune to the pain of feeling bullets. I'd actually learned the hard way a decade later that cocaine does not prevent pain from bullets, but that's a different story for a different episode. And I could go back and back through time as the dehumanization built into anti-drug films and public messages consistently gets more and more obvious and more shitty. Here's audio from a 1950s anti-drug public service announcement.
Addiction to drugs, too often acquired with tragic carelessness, may take control of a life and force actions not dreamed of before. To these addicts, life's only work is to find money for drugs. In their desperation, no means is too foul. Their only goal in life is to keep the deadening chemicals forever in their heart's blood.
Scary, right? The images played over that audio include our main character, this young dude, hitting a stranger over the head as he walks past in an alley and then robbing him. These stories about drugs and drug users teach us how to feel about the real world. Yesterday in my on-campus class, we talked about the evolution of our cultural understanding of addiction from what we used to think about addiction in the 1800s, it's a sin, it's a weakness, it's a moral failing, to what we think about it today, it's a disease, a contagion, it's deadly if left untreated, and it's chronic and lifelong, to what we'll probably think about it in the future, that it's a disorder, a syndrome, an event that unfolds in time and that can only be understood alongside the environment in which it develops. And when we finally accept that view as a culture, if we ever do, we'll finally be forced to reconsider those taken for granted social norms that drive addiction so much. Things like supply, legality, stigma, laws, restrictions. All the things that make the lives of addicted people more complicated and dangerous than they have to be. I'm not sure where exactly this Trump term leaves the U.S. in 4 years, but it's not entirely unthinkable that the drug war might actually evolve into yet another bigger stage than ever before, that it might expand to more than the current tax money we blow every year without ever seeing any reduction in street drugs, in overdose, in addiction. All those numbers continue to rise over time. The price of heroin and cocaine is the only thing in our economy that's inflation-proof because it's already got thousands of percent of markups built in. A pack of heroin has been $10 to $20 on the street, depending on the city, for the last 60 fucking years. The price of a cheeseburger during that same period has gone from something like a dime to something like $5. But Trump's most successful tool remains division. It's pitting people against other people by getting them to blame their problems on each other. And the drug war is forever fertile ground when it comes to that sort of fear and blame. Presumably there's going to be a lot of new pissed off and hurt people looking for someone to blame for the arrest or the overdose death of a loved one. During Trump's last term, overdose deaths rose to more than 100,000 per year, and even though COVID had a lot to do with that, so did the division and cruelty that he normalized. Until we really start to rethink drug use and drugs, we're bound to stay exactly where we are, suffering through a non-stop overdose crisis fueled by a never-ending war, losing people unnecessarily on both sides that cost more money every year. So pay attention to the way people talk about drugs and work to see through the rhetoric to figure out why their words make you and other people feel the way you do. That's where the magic of the war on drugs lies, in its power to motivate people emotionally. We can disable all that stuff if we start to figure out why people are saying what they're saying and how their statements impact people in the real world. That's it for today. Love yourselves and the addicted people in your life. I'm Ben Boyce.